Starting on day one of my new administration, we will end inflation and we will make America affordable again because the prices are too high.
Something that's impacting the wallets of every American, the cost of eggs skyrocketing, gas prices on the rise as well.
Donald Trump and the Republicans campaigned on cutting costs for the American people, gas, groceries, and overall living, and they promised that they would do it on day one. But on their watch, gas and grocery prices are skyrocketing. Meanwhile, their priorities are pardoning violent cop beaters and putting Donald Trump's face on Mount Rushmore. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, the videos speak for themselves. Donald Trump made a commitment to the American people. He made the promise. He set the standard. He said he would cut cost of living, groceries, and gas for the American people on day one. That has not happened. Not only has that not happened, prices are skyrocketing on Trump's watch, and Democrats are correctly pointing it out. House Minority Leader, Democrat Hakeem Jeffries, says, wait, the price of eggs and the cost of living was supposed to go down, not up. Indeed, Congressman Jasmine Crockett is pointing this out as well. Prices that have gone up under Donald Trump, eggs, gas, Netflix. But don't worry, Donnie wrote an order demanding prices come down. That'll do it. And that was during a slate of executive orders that included pardoning violent January 6th offenders. I want you to think about that. Donald Trump put more emphasis on pardoning 1,500 to 1,600 people who stormed the United States Capitol, 600 of them at least violently attacking people, including law enforcement, 172 of whom pled guilty to assaulting police, 69 of whom pled guilty to assaulting police with a deadly weapon. And all on Donald Trump's lie that he somehow won the 2020 election. They were rightly prosecuted, rightly convicted, many of them rightly pleading guilty. And Donald Trump was more focused on releasing them, freeing them because they tried and failed to overthrow the government on his behalf, rather than producing material benefit for his constituencies. That's the focus that Donald Trump has had since he was inaugurated on January 20th. Ruben Gallego, Democratic senator representing Arizona, he took Kyrsten Sinema's spot, also is pointing this out. Let's talk about eggs. Prices have skyrocketed 38% in the past year. For many families in Arizona, this is an expense they can't shrug off. It's time for Trump to take action to lower costs for families. Eggs in December 2024, $4.49. But in January 2025, after Donald Trump took office, already $5.79. What a staggering increase in just a short amount of time. Now, the reason that I'm picking on Trump here, we got some more clips to play, is because Donald Trump was the one who set the standard. Trump said on day one, and we'll play the clip again, day one, that we're going to make America affordable again. But on day one of his administration, it's gone in the opposite direction. America is getting more expensive demonstrably. Now, you can say, as I'm sure many MAGA Republicans, well, you can't hold that against Trump. I can. Number one, because Trump promised to do it. So unless Donald Trump is an idiot or a liar, which I happen to think he's both of these things, but you don't, MAGA, that means I can hold Trump to the standard. It's actually the morally right thing to do, the morally correct thing to do, the consistent, rational, honest thing to do, to hold Donald Trump to his promises. Imagine if President Biden said on day one that he would cut prices for the American people, that he would just be able to do it with the snap of his fingers. MAGA would rightly hold Biden to that standard. But they want you to grade Trump on a curve. No, that's bullshit. Catherine Rampell, economic columnist for the Washington Post, CNN contributor, is also pointing this out, that none of Trump's policies actually address the cost of living in this country, and certainly nothing he's done and been prioritizing in the past week he's been president.
So to the extent that the American public voted for him to deal with prices, I have seen nothing in the agenda so far that would actually achieve that goal.
Lower gas prices, lower costs. That's fuel costs impact everything up and down the supply chain. is one of the key factors. When price of gasoline goes up, the price of every good
gas
goes
has
up.
come down a lot in the
Sure,
past
and
year.
it will go down more if he has Saudi Arabia playing ball. And they showed last administration, Trump 1.0, that they were willing to play ball. They came to the table to negotiate with Israel over normalizing relations. They did lower gas prices and increase demand.
They also raised gas
pumping.
prices when he asked them to during COVID.
They are actually, just yesterday, they announced that they're going to invest $600 billion more in the United States.
That's about as much as they committed to buying weapons under Biden.
But wait a minute.
So Catherine Rampell is just so good at what she does. I mean, she really is reminding people, because this is something that people forget, that Donald Trump pressured foreign, oil producers to actually move to raise gas prices and pad their pockets. So this idea that Donald Trump can snap his fingers and compel, again, foreign oil interests to do what he wants, well, to the extent that that's true, he also pressured them in the past to raise prices in ways that would hurt Americans as well. But oil production, let's put it like this, to the extent that gas prices are a microcosm or a bellwether for energy costs or just overall living expense in this country, just a couple of things to point out. Number one, gas prices are right now on the rise on Donald Trump's watch. They'd been lowered, and now they're on the rise again on Donald Trump's watch. So I guess by their logic, by conservative logic, that's Donald Trump's fault. Why is he raising gas prices? Why are gas prices raising on his watch? He should be held accountable for that, number one. Number two, oil production in the United States was at its highest level under President Biden, higher than it ever was under Donald Trump. So does Biden get credit for that? Do you give Biden credit for that if, like, producing more oil, which helps lower gas prices because it increases the supply? Are you going to give Biden credit for that? No, of course not. Instead, we're just like vaguely gesturing towards these amorphous policies. Okay, well, Trump has said he's going to cut gas prices. He hasn't actually done anything to address it, and gas prices are on the rise on his watch. But, that means something. Well, no, it doesn't. Not by the standard that Trump himself created. And by the way, if we're talking about other policies that Trump has articulated, tariffs, 25% tariffs on all imports from Canada and Mexico, two of our three biggest trading partners, that's probably going to raise grocery prices. We've discussed this in previous videos because tariffs are paid ultimately by the end consumer. The companies that have to pay the tariffs and duties, they're going to offload that cost onto the end consumer. So if Donald Trump has it his way, Americans will be paying even more than what they're doing now because he says he's not implementing these tariffs until the 1st of February. So we're seeing gas and grocery prices rise now. What happens if Trump follows through on his promise to impose 25% blanket tariffs on two of our three biggest trade partners? I imagine prices are going to skyrocket further still. But again, it just goes back to the standard that they've created. I will also remind you that when President Biden and the Democrats were in charge, remember what the Republican standard was. Anything that went wrong on Biden's watch was Biden's fault because it was his responsibility to manage. Now, these same people who created that standard and exploited it ruthlessly want you to grade Trump on a curve. Oh, he's only been president for less than a week. Well, again, we'll play the clip just as a reminder. I can use Trump's own words against him. He promised he's such a super genius, he's so omnipotent, he's so unstoppable that he would get it done on day one. That's the standard he created. It's fair game to use his own words against him, number one. Number two, even if he didn't say those things, this is happening on Trump's watch. He is the chief executive. He's head of state. He's head of government. And he has unified control of government. I want you to remember this. When President Biden took office, yes, he had the White House. Yes, he had the House. Yes, he had the Senate. Razor-thin margins and a hostile Supreme Court. Donald Trump is in a much better position. He has the White House. He has a 3-person majority in the Senate, which is more than Biden ever had. Yes, they have a razor-thin House majority, but again, Biden had to deal with razor-thin margins in both chambers, and he has a sympathetic Supreme Court, a supermajority, a right-wing supermajority that is much more inclined to acquiesce to his requests. And he was the one who promised to get it done on day one. Now, pointing out, as well you should, that by Trump's own standard, and by the standard that Republicans have imposed on Democrats, that this is all Donald Trump and the Republicans' fault, what is the specific reason that the price of eggs are skyrocketing? Bird flu. We are seeing increase, I believe, at least one, if not more, fatal case of bird flu, okay, leading to a shortage of eggs. As Robert Reich, former labor secretary under President Clinton, has pointed out, egg prices hit record highs this week. Much of the increase is the result of egg shortages brought on by avian flu. How has Trump responded? By ordering public health agencies to cease communications with the public. His presidency is a threat to our health and our wallets. So even there, even because you'll see Trump supporters in your replies, I promise you, who are like, no, you can't hold Donald Trump to the standard that he created by saying he would get it done on day one. You can't hold him to that. You also can't hold him to the standard that we have ruthlessly imposed on Democrats because it's the bird flu. It's the bird flu's fault. Well, unfortunately, Donald Trump is president, which means that it's his responsibility to quickly and efficiently deal with the bird flu. And in just 5 days in office, he's actually taken steps to make it more dangerous, as Robert Reich points out, by ordering his CDC and other health agencies to basically put a freeze on engagement with the public. There's also been reports that tracking of bird flu cases, public-facing tracking of bird flu cases, have been frozen as well as a consequence of this. That's Donald Trump's decision. See, this is the thing that's frustrating with so many MAGA Republicans. It's not just the hypocrisy. Again, they hold the Democrats to a ruthlessly high standard. Anything bad that happens when Democrats are in power or because of Democrats, anything good that happens when Democrats are in power, it has nothing to do with them, so we shouldn't give them the credit. And that standard apparently doesn't apply to Republican presidents or Republican governments. And also, you can't even use the standard that Donald Trump specifically, explicitly created, that I would get it done on day one. Not only is it all of that, but they also absolve Donald Trump of just any agency, period. He doesn't have a responsibility to deal with the bird flu. Yes, he does. Quickly. Efficiently. The exact opposite of what he did with COVID, where he lied about COVID, downplayed the threat of COVID, promised if you just close your eyes and click your heels and pray really hard, it would go away in a few days. It'll be gone by President's Day. It'll be gone by Labor Day. It'll be gone by Easter. All of these random, just totally arbitrary benchmarks. And as a consequence, more than 1 million Americans died. And as a consequence, his supporters, his followers, red states and red districts, died at a disproportionate rate because of so much COVID and vaccine skepticism that was fomented by Donald Trump. Yeah, he's president. He's in charge. He has a responsibility to competently, efficiently, and quickly manage this issue. As Politics Verse pointed out, we are 4 days into Trump's presidency, and so far, eggs have doubled in price. Gas has increased to $3.13 a gallon. The war is still ongoing between Russia and Ukraine. And again, remember, Trump promised that he would end that war in 24 hours or less. We did a video about it. He failed. You can say, well, that's hyperbole. No, he explicitly set that standard. And it is perfectly fair to use his words against him and to hold him to his promises. He made a promise. He failed. He gets the blame. He promises to get rid of FEMA, promises to get rid of DEI initiatives, declared that there are only 2 recognized genders, wants to drill gas in Alaska, has come after Denmark over Greenland, wants to illegally annex Canada, pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, pulled the U.S. out of the World Health Organization, and pardoned violent convicted criminals who beat cops on January 6th. These are where his priorities are. Aggressive militaristic territorial expansion, which will almost certainly not happen. But that's where his priorities are. He wants to, abolish FEMA and let states fend for themselves, even though that would screw over red states, Republican states, even more than blue states. That's where his priorities are. Pardoning 1,500 cultists, 600 of whom attacked cops viciously. That's where his priorities are. And it's not just Trump. It's also by the way, this is the citation about the CDC. CDC.gov trackers on seasonal flu and bird flu have not been updated, and the agency's flagship weekly report, which has communicated public health information for decades, wasn't issued as normal on Thursday as a consequence of Donald Trump's orders. So it's not just Donald Trump, though. It's bad enough if it's coming from the president, but it's also the Republican Party. So as I pointed out, as gas and grocery prices skyrocket on their watch, Trump's too busy pardoning violent cop beaters and trying to get ex-staff killed because he's been focusing as well on withdrawing personal security, government-funded security for former government officials who have been targeted by Iran because they worked for Donald Trump. These are Republicans. Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo's sidekick, I'm blanking on his name, Brian Hook. And then Dr. Fauci, all of whom served Donald Trump, and the death threats that they're receiving domestically and from abroad are because they served Donald Trump. But because they criticized him after they left office or after he left office, he's pulling their security. He put them in a position where they're now the target of death threats, and that has deliberately weakened them out of spite. That's where his priorities are. So Trump's too busy pardoning violent cop beaters and trying to get ex-staff killed, and Republicans are making bills to give Trump a third term and a spot on Mount Rushmore. As a reminder, this is a screenshot. Republican Congressman Andy Ogles wanting to modify the 22nd Amendment to give Donald Trump a place on Mount Rushmore. You also have Republican Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna from Florida drafting legislation to put Donald Trump on Mount Rushmore. These people have unified control of government, and this is where they're spending their time as gas and grocery prices skyrocket. And they promised they would cut prices, not just keep prices stable, but cut prices on day one. They've objectively failed. They are objectively inferior at running government than Democrats. And we need to make noise about this because voters need to remember this come Election Day. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.